Hello, my name is Mariana Durang. For my inquiry learning project, I asked the question, if my school does not already have a makerspace, how can I start my own? In order to answer this question, I really wanted to look into what a makerspace is meant to be and do. I looked into the benefits of makerspaces in schools and the positive effects they have on students. I also looked into what sorts of things I could have in a makerspace. Finally, I did some research into what I might need to get started in implementing my own makerspace if the school I am currently working at does not have a designed or designated space for it. According to makerspaces.com, a makerspace is, quote, a collaborative workspace inside a school, library, or separate public or private facility for making, learning, exploring, and sharing that uses high-tech to no-tech tools. End quote. While I was aware of the fact that many makerspaces become where students explore and play with technology like computers, robotics, and 3D printing, I had no idea that there were no-tech makerspaces. For a school that would just be starting out, a no-tech makerspace could be a fantastic place to start while more resources become available. In an article, David Nagel states that, quote, according to data pulled from the latest National Speak Up survey from Project Tomorrow, a full 31% of schools already have a makerspace of some sort, and another 23% have plans to implement one, end quote. This says to me that approaching my principal with the idea of creating a makerspace is a step in the right direction. But what are the benefits of makerspaces? Why spend time and potentially a fair amount of money on having one? On the American Library Association website, the page on standards for school librarians says, quote, school librarians should engage in a continuous evaluation of the effectiveness of the school library program to meet the needs of patrons for access to ideas and information through the resources of the library, end quote. Makerspaces provide another way and more tools for our patrons, the students of our school, to access and gain knowledge and information, not just through the use of technology, but through providing new ways of interacting and learning. There are students who benefit from more hands-on experiences to retain and practice concepts they are learning in their classrooms. In an article on the Alexandria blog, they give a great example of how makerspaces can incorporate multiple subjects and disciplines. They give the example that you could have students develop a video game. They go on to say that at its core, it looks like it requires more coding and engineering principles. But when you look deeper, you realize that creating a video game also includes creating characters, a storyline, plot, design, writing code, and developing a guide. If you really break down the project, you can see that it crosses over into social studies, writing, grammar, and science engineering. Not only is this a great way for students to see real-world applications of what they are learning in school, but it starts leaning into career readiness. Clearly, the benefits of makerspaces are many, but realistically, if I were to approach my principal with the idea of implementing one in my school, the first thing they would probably ask is where would it go? In the David Nagel article, he says that in the schools that have already implemented a makerspace, 71% have it located in the school library or media center. I think this makes sense, given that school libraries are often at the center of the school, and they often have more space than classrooms. I would really have to know the layout of my media center and what each space is being used for. Could there be something that is moved out of the library to make more space? Can furniture be rearranged, or maybe some shelves moved to block off an area on the main floor? Is there an attached room that can be cleared out and set up as the makerspace? Another plus about having the makerspace in the library is that there is almost always a staff member there to supervise, the librarian. That's not to say that the librarian could or even should run the makerspace alone. In fact, in a study done by Heather Morsfield Lane, in which she interviewed various librarians about their makerspaces, she says that patron training is often a group effort. Quote, patrons coming to makerspaces rarely know what they are doing. Younger patrons are more likely to step in to experiment, play, break, and build. They possess that fearlessness that makerspaces encourage. The librarians interviewed offered a myriad of training opportunities and workshops to their students and patrons, commonly with the help of staff, student assistants, and volunteers. Most offered their training in a face-to-face environment, but some offered online tutorials and webinars as well." End quote. This means that another thing I would need to implement a makerspace is the support of the staff and school community. Parents and other volunteers from the community would be crucial in helping guide students in using all the new equipment and tools that end up in the makerspace. And staff would be crucial in helping me reinforce the rules and guidelines for using the makerspace. In the actual makerspace, I would need supplies for things like coding, 3D printing, electronics, robotics, sewing, woodworking, take-apart sessions, inventing, and experimenting. Ideally, a good range of high to low or no-tech activities would make the makerspace more accessible for my students. This leads me to funding. Obviously, the support of the principal would mean that they could look into working within our budget to provide some money for a makerspace. However, I doubt it would be enough to start a makerspace from scratch, especially if the school has to purchase any furniture and all the supplies for the activities. This is where, once again, having that community support could be invaluable. I could reach out to community partners on behalf of the school. I know there are organizations like the Latino Chamber of Commerce or the Belk Foundation that have a history of working with schools and providing money for special projects. There are also organizations like the German Language and Culture Foundation that already work with universities like UNC Charlotte to provide tours of different companies in order to allow students to see different career paths. They would probably also be interested to hear about the potential career readiness that could be explored through a makerspace in a school, particularly since many of the companies that the German Language and Culture Foundation partner with fall under STEM-based careers. After all of my research, I definitely like the idea of a makerspace, and I definitely see how creating one from scratch is definitely possible, especially now that I know that it doesn't necessarily have to be all about technology. I think there is some great potential to let students explore different careers and incorporating more literacy and social studies into makerspace activities. It would obviously take time, but there is no rule that says you cannot add things to your makerspace as more money or resources become available. I definitely also think the benefits of a makerspace are worth the investment of both time and money, and with the support of the school and community, it would be entirely possible to create a makerspace in a school where there isn't already one.